The parlour door swung open with such force that Elara Moss flinched, her teacup rattling against its saucer. A man stepped through. No, entered was too ordinary a word for the way he moved. He seemed to materialize from the shadows themselves, tall and lean in black clothing so perfectly tailored it looked like darkness given form. "Lord Blackwood," her father announced, his voice pitched too high with nervous excitement. "May I present my daughters?" Elara, 22 years old and painfully aware of her faded grey dress, pressed herself further into the corner chair. This was Isadora's moment. It had always been meant for Isadora. Her sister stood beside the fireplace, positioned there deliberately an hour ago. The afternoon light caught the gold in Isadora's hair and made her blue silk gown shimmer. She was a painting come to life, chin lifted just enough to display the elegant line of her throat. The visitor's eyes, silver grey, like moonlight on mist, swept past Isadora as if she were part of the furniture. They fixed on Elara instead. Her breath caught. No one looked at her like that. No one looked at her at all, not when Isadora stood in the same room. But this man's gaze held her pinned like a butterfly to cork, and something ancient and knowing flickered in those pale depths. "You," he said. His voice was soft, but it filled every corner of the room. "You are the elder daughter." It wasn't a question. Yes, my lord." The words came out barely above a whisper. From his coat pocket, he withdrew something small that caught the light. A locket, gold and delicate, suspended from a fine chain. He opened it with one pale finger. "This portrait," Lord Blackwood said, holding it toward her. "Do you recognize the woman?" Elara rose on unsteady legs and crossed to him. The miniature painting inside the locket showed a young woman in clothing from another century. The style was old, perhaps 100 years or more, but the face was hauntingly familiar. "She looks like," Elara's voice trailed off, "your great-great-grandmother, Elena Moss." He snapped the locket closed. "She made a pact with my family, a debt that comes due today." The room had gone very still. Even her father, who always had words spilling from his mouth like coins from a torn purse, stood silent. "I don't understand," Elara managed. The agreement was simple. Lord Blackwood's silver eyes never left her face. When the bloodline produced a daughter who carried Elena's features, she would come to Blackwood Manor to settle what was owed. "Now wait just a moment." Mr. Moss finally found his voice. "We understood you were seeking a bride, yes, but surely you can see that Isadora is the more suitable choice. She's been trained in all the social graces. She plays the pianoforte beautifully. I am not here to negotiate." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "The pact names the elder daughter who bears the resemblance. That is Miss Elara Moss." Isadora's face had gone white, then red. "This is absurd. Look at her. She's practically a servant in her own home. I'm the one who—" "Isadora, enough." Their father's hand cut through the air, but Elara could see the calculation working behind his eyes. The Moss family fortune had crumbled to dust over the past decade. Whatever Lord Blackwood offered in exchange for this pact would be their salvation. And Elara, as always, was the sacrifice no one would miss. "What happens?" she heard herself ask. "If I refuse?" Lord Blackwood tilted his head slightly, and for just a moment something that might have been respect flickered across his pale features. "Then your family loses everything. The estate, the name, the legacy, all of it reverts to my holding, as the original agreement specified." He paused. "But you won't refuse. How can you be so certain?" His smile was sad and knowing. "Because you've spent your whole life being invisible, Miss Moss, and I am offering to see you." The library door closed behind them with a soft thud. Elara stood near the entrance, her hands clasped tight in front of her faded grey dress. The room smelled of old paper and dust. Lord Blackwood moved toward the far wall without making a sound. His black coat barely stirred as he walked. Elara watched him reach for a leather-bound volume on the highest shelf. He moved with impossible ease, as if gravity meant nothing to him. "Your ancestor made a promise," he said. His silver grey eyes remained fixed on the book in his hands. 127 years ago. Elara's throat felt dry. What kind of promise? The kind that binds. He turned a page. The paper crackled. Elena Moss was desperate. Her family faced ruin. I offered her a solution. The words hung in the air between them. Elara took a small step forward. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. What did you give her? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Gold, enough to restore the Moss fortune. Lord Blackwood looked up from the book. His pale face showed no expression. In exchange, she promised me something precious, something I could not take by force. Elara felt cold spread through her stomach. What did she promise you? A descendant who bore her face. He closed the book with a snap. A companion who would come willingly to Blackwood Manor, who would stay until the debt was paid. The room suddenly felt smaller. Elara's fingers twisted together. I never made that promise. She did. I don't understand why it falls to me. Blood carries more than names. Lord Blackwood set the book on a nearby table. It carries obligations. Your great-great-grandmother knew this when she signed the contract. Show me. The words came out before Elara could stop them. She lifted her chin. If this contract exists, I want to see it. Something flickered in his silver-grey eyes. It might have been surprise. He drew a folded parchment from inside his coat. The paper looked ancient, yellowed at the edges. Elara crossed the room. Her worn shoes made soft sounds on the wooden floor. She took the parchment with shaking hands. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. She recognized the surname immediately. Elena Moss had signed at the bottom in dark ink. The signature looked exactly like Elara's own. What does "until the debt is paid" mean? She looked up at him. What exactly do you want from me? Lord Blackwood stood very still. I want what every cursed creature wants. An end. You speak in riddles. Frustration crept into her voice. If you want me to come to your manor, I deserve to know why. What will happen to me there? You will live in comfort. His tone remained flat. You will want for nothing. Mrs. Finch will see to your needs. That's not an answer. Elara set the parchment down on the table. You're telling me what I'll have, not what you'll take. The silence stretched between them. Outside the library window, clouds covered the afternoon sun. The room grew darker. I cannot tell you everything. Lord Blackwood's voice dropped lower. Some things must be discovered. Some truths cannot be spoken, only witnessed. Then are to refuse. Elara's hands stopped shaking. The words felt solid in her mouth. I won't go to a place where I don't know what awaits me. I won't honor a contract I never signed. Lord Blackwood moved closer. He stopped just beyond arm's reach. His silver-grey eyes caught the dim light from the window. Your father owes me a great deal of money, he said quietly. Money borrowed against this very promise. If you refuse, he will lose everything. Your sister will have no dowry. Your family will be destroyed. The cold in Elara's stomach turned to ice. You're threatening them. I'm stating facts. He tilted his head slightly. The choice remains yours. But choices always have consequences. Elara looked down at the parchment on the table. Elena Moss had signed away something precious, now that debt had travelled through generations to land on Elara's shoulders. She thought of Isadora's blue silk gown, of her father's nervous face, of the life they would lose if she said no. How long? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. How long must I stay? Until the curse is broken. Lord Blackwood's expression remained unreadable. Or until the debt is paid. The attic smelled of dust and old paper. Elara sneezed twice as she climbed the narrow stairs, holding a flickering candle. Her uncle had left for town an hour ago. Isadora was practicing piano downstairs, the notes drifting up like accusations. This was her only chance to search. Grandmother's trunk sat in the far corner, buried beneath moth-eaten blankets and broken furniture. Elara had asked her uncle about Elena Moss at breakfast. He'd gone pale and told her to leave the past alone. That response told her everything she needed to know. Someone in this family knew the truth. The trunk's lock had rusted through. Elara pried it open with shaking fingers. Inside lay folded dresses that crumbled at her touch, a tarnished silver brush, and a wooden box wrapped in oilcloth. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The box contained letters, dozens of them, tied with black ribbon. Elara held the candle closer and read the first line of the top letter. "My dearest Elena, the nights grow longer without you." No signature, but the handwriting was elegant and precise. Mail. The paper felt strange under her fingers. Too thick, too smooth. Not the kind a merchant's daughter would receive from an ordinary suitor. Elara untied the ribbon and spread the letters across the dusty floor. They were arranged by date. The earliest was from 1769, the latest 1770. Only 1 year. But there were so many letters. She read quickly, her eyes darting across faded ink. The writer spoke of loneliness, of watching the world change while he remained frozen, of a curse that bound him to stone walls and empty rooms. "I should not burden you with my confession, but you asked for truth. I am not what I seem. The years do not touch me as they touch others. I have walked this earth for decades, Elena, and found no peace until you." Elara's hands trembled. The candle wax dripped onto her wrist, hot and sharp. "Your brother's debt weighs heavily on you. I see it in your eyes when you speak of him. Let me offer a solution, gold enough to save your family from ruin. I ask only for your promise." The next letter was shorter. "You came to me last night and agreed. I should feel joy, but I feel only shame. What manner of creature bargains with the woman he loves? Yet I am desperate, Elena, so desperate that I would bind you to me through contract rather than lose you entirely." Elara's throat tightened. She reached for the next letter, but footsteps creaked on the attic stairs. She shoved the letters back into the box and spun around. Mrs. Finch stood in the doorway. The housekeeper wore a dark blue dress and held her own candle. Her expression was unreadable. "Miss Moss," she said quietly, "Lord Blackwood sent me to fetch you." "He's here?" Elara's voice came out higher than she intended. "He waits in the parlour." Mrs. Finch's gaze dropped to the wooden box in Elara's hands. "I see you've found your grandmother's secrets." Elara clutched the box tighter. "Did you know? About the contract? I have served Lord Blackwood for 30 years. Mrs. Finch descended 2 steps into the attic. "I know what he is, what he suffers, what he hopes." "Then tell me the truth. What happened to Elena?" Mrs. Finch's mouth pressed into a thin line. She made her choice. She went to Blackwood Manor of her own will. "And then?" Elara's heart raced. "Did she leave there? Did he—" "She lived." Mrs. Finch's voice was firm. "For 53 years after she signed that contract. She married, grew old in her own home." The words struck Elara like cold water. "But the contract said—" "The contract said a descendant bearing her face would come to him. It did not say she must stay forever." Mrs. Finch's expression softened slightly. "Elena Moss broke his curse, Miss Elara, or nearly did. She gave him 1 year of companionship. 1 year of being seen as a man rather than a monster. It was not enough to free him, but it was enough to give him hope." Elara stared at the letters in her hands. "He loved her. He loves her still." Mrs. Finch turned back toward the stairs. "And now he sees her face in yours. Whether that is blessing or burden, only you can decide. But he waits below, and it is not wise to keep him waiting." Elara looked down at the wooden box. Her grandmother had made this choice and survived it, had lived a full life afterward. But Lord Blackwood remained cursed. Whatever Elena had done, it had not been enough. Elara's heart hammered as she descended the stairs. The letters remained hidden in her pocket, their edges sharp against her hip. Mrs. Finch followed 2 steps behind, silent as a shadow. Lord Blackwood stood in the entrance hall, not the parlour. He wore a deep charcoal coat tonight, almost black in the dim light. His silver-grey eyes tracked her movement down each step. "Miss Moss?" He inclined his head. "I apologise for the late hour. I hoped we might speak privately." Her father was still in town. Isadora had retired to her room an hour ago, claiming a headache. The house felt hollow around them. "The garden, perhaps?" Lord Blackwood gestured toward the door. The night air might be pleasant. It wasn't a question. Not really. Nothing he said ever was. Mrs. Finch handed Elara a shawl without being asked. The housekeeper's fingers lingered on her shoulder for a moment. A warning? A comfort? Elara couldn't tell. The garden looked different under moonlight. The roses her mother had planted years ago grew wild now, unpruned and tangled. Their scent hung thick in the cool air. Lord Blackwood walked ahead, his movements too smooth, too quiet. No footsteps disturbed the gravel path. Elara's own shoes crunched loudly with each step. He stopped beside the old stone fountain. It hadn't held water in years. Moss crept up its sides like green fingers. "You've been searching," he said. Not a question. A statement. Elara's hand moved to her pocket, to the letters. "You knew my grandmother." "I did." The letters speak of a cursed man, an immortal who made a bargain. She pulled the folded papers from her pocket. Her hands shook. "That was you." Lord Blackwood turned to face her fully. The moonlight made his pale skin seem almost luminous. Yes. Just yes. No denial, no explanation. The simple word hung between them. "You loved her." Elara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Elena, my grandmother, you loved her, but you still bought her with gold." Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, or shame. "I did both those things, yes." "Then why?" The question burst from her. "Why make a contract if you loved her? Why not simply court her properly?" Lord Blackwood's jaw tightened. He looked away toward the dark line of trees beyond the garden. "Because I am not a man who can court anyone properly. Because I am bound to my estate, unable to leave its grounds. Because I am cursed to watch everyone I know grow old and die, while I remain unchanged." He spoke faster now, words spilling out like water from a cracked vessel. "Eleanor's brother faced debtor's prison. She came to me in desperation, having heard rumours of the strange lord who never aged. She offered herself as my companion if I would save her family." He turned back to Elara. "I should have refused. I should have given the gold freely. But I was lonely, Miss Moss. 100 years of solitude had made me desperate. So I bargained. I made her sign a contract promising me a descendant who bore her face." "Why a descendant?" Elara clutched the letters tighter. "Why not simply keep Elena herself?" "Because Elena deserved a life." Lord Blackwood's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She deserved to marry, to have a family, to grow old with someone who could give her a normal existence. I cared for her too much to trap her in my darkness." The admission settled over the garden like frost. "So you waited," Elara said slowly, "for generations, until someone who looked like her was born." "Yes. And now you have me." The words tasted bitter. "A replacement, a copy of the woman you truly wanted." "No." Lord Blackwood stepped closer. His silver-grey eyes caught the moonlight. "You are not a replacement, Miss Moss. You are the one who can break the cycle." "What cycle?" "The cycle of my existence. The endless years, the watching and waiting, and never changing." His hand reached toward her, then stopped. "Elena could not free me because she never came willingly. The contract bound her, forced her hand, but you—" "I didn't come willingly either," Elara interrupted. "I came because of the same contract, the same binding promise." "You came," Lord Blackwood said softly, "but you also searched for truth. You read the letters. You're standing here demanding answers instead of simply accepting your fate." His expression shifted into something almost like hope. "That is the difference, Miss Moss. That is what Elena could never do." The iron gate groaned as Elara pushed it open. Stone steps descended into darkness beneath the manor's east wing. She held her candle higher, watching shadows dance across damp walls. Lord Blackwood had disappeared after his confession in the garden, leaving her questions unanswered. Mrs. Finch had found her shivering by the fountain an hour later and guided her to a bedroom. But sleep was impossible. The letters had mentioned a crypt, a place where Elena had discovered the truth. Elara's hand trembled as she reached the bottom step. The air here felt thick, pressing against her skin like cold water. Her candle flame flickered, but held. Stone coffins lined the walls. Names were carved into their surfaces. Blackwood names stretching back centuries. She moved between them, searching. There, in the corner. A mirror stood against the far wall, taller than a man. Its silver surface gleamed despite the dust covering everything else. Strange symbols were etched into its ornate frame. Elara stepped closer. Her reflection stared back, mousy brown hair falling loose around her face, hazel eyes wide with fear. Then her reflection smiled. She hadn't smiled. The reflection's lips moved, forming words Elara could hear inside her skull rather than through her ears. "You've come at last." "Who are you?" Elara whispered. "I am what you will become, what Elena became, what all the women in our line carry in their essence." The reflection's eyes shifted. The hazel darkened to deep amber, then brightened until they glowed like embers. Elara stumbled backward. Her candle fell, but the crypt didn't darken. Light emanated from the mirror itself now, cold and silver. "I don't understand." The contract wasn't for companionship, Elara. It was for transformation. Lord Blackwood is bound to his estate by a curse. He cannot die, cannot leave, cannot change. But we can. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. Elena! Elena chose this. She read the contract's true words, hidden beneath the surface promises. She knew what gold he truly offered. The gold in her veins, the fire in her spirit. She became something more than human, strong enough to stand beside him, strong enough to break his curse. But she left him. Elara's voice cracked. The letters. She went away. Because she was afraid. The change had begun, but she couldn't complete it. She ran, married a mortal man, tried to bury what she'd become. But the essence passes down. Waiting. The reflection pressed its hand against the mirror's surface from the inside. Elara watched her own palm lift, without her choosing, drawn forward by invisible threads. Don't. But her hand moved closer. You already feel it, don't you? The cold that doesn't touch you anymore. The way darkness seems less dark. The hunger. Elara's fingertips touched the mirror. Ice shot through her veins, so sudden and sharp she gasped. Her reflection grinned, showing teeth that were too white, too sharp. No! Elara yanked her hand back. Pain exploded behind her eyes. She fell to her knees on the stone floor, pressing her palms against her temples. Her vision blurred, then sharpened until she could see every crack in the ancient stones, every particle of dust floating in the air. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Elara! Lord Blackwood's voice held panic she'd never heard before. He appeared in the doorway, his silver-grey eyes wild. Get away from the mirror! But it was too late. Elara looked down at her hands. Her veins showed dark beneath her skin, spreading like ink through water. When she met Blackwood's gaze, she knew her eyes had changed. The hazel was gone. Gold burned in its place. What's happening to me? Her voice sounded strange, layered, as if two people spoke at once. Lord Blackwood knelt beside her, his face stricken. The awakening. I thought we had more time. I thought I could explain before I started becoming a monster. Elara's laugh was bitter. Like you? No. He gripped her shoulders. Not like me. Something else entirely. Something I need you to understand before the change completes. The gold in Elara's eyes pulsed brighter. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, not for food, but for something she couldn't name. Then explain quickly, she whispered, because I don't know how much longer I'll be myself. The transformation burned through Elara's veins like liquid silver. She stumbled away from the mirror, her palms pressed against the cold stone wall of the crypt. Her breath came in short gasps. Above her, footsteps echoed through the manor. Heavy, deliberate. She knew those footsteps. Lord Blackwood was searching for her. Elara climbed the narrow stairs from the crypt, her legs unsteady beneath her. The darkness no longer frightened her. In fact, she could see perfectly well without a candle. Every shadow had shape and texture. Every sound carried meaning. She emerged into the east wing corridor. Lord Blackwood stood at the far end, his silver-grey eyes finding her instantly. "You touched the mirror." His voice held no question, only resignation. "You knew I would find it." Elara's own voice sounded different to her ears, clearer, sharper. He moved toward her with that preternatural grace. "I hoped you would not. Not yet. Not before I could explain." "Explain what? That you wanted to turn me into a monster?" The words came out harsher than she intended. The ice in her veins made everything feel raw. Lord Blackwood flinched. "Is that what you think you are becoming?" "I don't know what I'm becoming." Elara held up her hands. In the dim light, her skin looked paler than before. The veins beneath showed dark and prominent. "My grandmother fled from this. She chose a mortal life instead. And she was miserable for it." Mrs. Finch's voice came from behind Elara. The housekeeper stood in a doorway, her expression grave. "I knew Elena before she left. She loved him, but fear won." Elara turned to stare at Mrs. Finch. "You knew her, but that was 127 years ago." "Yes." Mrs. Finch stepped into the corridor. In the shadows, her form seemed to shimmer slightly. "I am like him, bound to this place, cursed to watch time pass." The revelation should have shocked Elara. Instead, it made a terrible sense. Mrs. Finch never aged in the portraits that lined the manor's halls. Always the same stern face, the same watchful eyes. "How many others?" Elara asked. "Just us two," Lord Blackwood said quietly. "The curse requires at least 2 souls, one to anchor it, one to witness. Elena was meant to be the third, the one to break it." Elara's mind raced. 3 souls. That's why you needed someone from her bloodline, someone who carries whatever she started. "The transformation is in your blood," Mrs. Finch confirmed. "Passed down through generations, waiting. You are already more than human, Elara. You have been since the day you turned 22. The ice in Elara's veins pulsed. She thought of all the times she had felt different, unwanted, invisible. Perhaps she had never been quite human at all. "What happens if I complete the transformation?" She directed the question at Lord Blackwood. He met her gaze steadily. "You become immortal, bound to this estate as we are. And with 3 souls joined, the curse can finally be challenged." Challenged, not broken. But it is the only chance we have had in over a century. Elara walked to the window at the corridor's end. Through the glass, she could see the cliffs beyond the manor grounds. The sea stretched out, dark and infinite under the night sky. Her old life waited for her out there. Her father's house, her sister's contempt. A future of being overlooked and undervalued until she withered into old age. Here, in this cursed place, someone finally saw her, not as a debt to be paid or a shadow to be ignored, but as the key to everything. "I need to see the sea," she said suddenly. "The cliffs. Before I decide." Lord Blackwood hesitated. "The grounds end at the cliff edge. I cannot go beyond." "I know." Elara turned to face him. "But I can. For now, I still can." Understanding flickered across his pale features. If she completed the transformation, she would be bound here forever. This might be her last chance to stand at the boundary between the cursed estate and the free world beyond. "I'll take you," he said. They walked through the manor in silence. Mrs. Finch did not follow. The housekeeper simply watched them go, her expression unreadable. Outside, the night air felt sharp against Elara's skin. The transformation made every sensation more intense. She could smell the salt from the sea, hear the waves crashing against the rocks below. Lord Blackwood led her across the grounds toward the cliffs. His steps slowed as they approached the edge of the estate. An invisible line marked the boundary. She could see it now, a faint shimmer in the air, like heat rising from stone. "This is as far as I can go," he said. Elara stepped past him, past the shimmer, onto the wild grass that grew at the cliff's edge. The wind whipped her hair loose from its knot. The sea roared below, dark and hungry. One more step, and she would fall. One more step, and all of this would end. She stood at the precipice between 2 impossible choices. Behind her, Lord Blackwood waited in his invisible prison. Before her, the mortal world spread out vast and indifferent, and inside her, the ice burned brighter with every passing moment. The first rays of sunlight touched the eastern windows of the manor, and Elara felt them like needles against her skin. She stood in the sunroom, a chamber she had not entered before. Glass walls surrounded her on three sides. Mrs. Finch had led her here an hour before dawn, then departed without explanation. Lord Blackwood entered as the sky lightened from black to grey. He carried a silver goblet. The transformation is nearly complete. His voice was steady, but his silver-grey eyes searched her face with something that looked like fear. This will finish it. Elara looked at the goblet. She could smell what it contained. Blood, yes, but also something older. Something that made her new senses recoil and reach forward at the same time. What happens after? Her voice had changed fully now. It carried an edge like wind through winter branches. The curse breaks. Mrs. Finch and I will be free to leave the estate. He set the goblet on the windowsill. You will be bound here in our place. The words hung between them like a blade. You lied. The accusation came out flat, empty. The curse requires 3 souls. Elena fled before completing her transformation, trapping Mrs. Finch and me here for over a century. If you finish what she began, the binding transfers to you alone. Elara's hands trembled. The veins beneath her pale skin pulsed with cold fire. You knew. From the beginning, you knew I would be trapped here forever. Yes, he did not look away. I am a selfish creature, Elara. I have been alone for so long that I convinced myself any price was worth paying for freedom. The sun climbed higher. Its light touched her arm, and she gasped, not from pain, but from a deep, visceral wrongness. Her body knew what it was becoming. Daylight would soon be her enemy. Drink, and the transformation completes before sunrise burns you. Lord Blackwood's voice cracked. Or refuse, and the half-change will tear you apart within the hour. Those are your choices. No. Elara picked up the goblet. Her reflection wavered in its silver surface. Pale, sharp-featured, already more than human. There is a third choice. She walked to the center of the sunroom where 3 walls of glass converged. The sunrise spilled across the floor in golden sheets. What are you doing? Lord Blackwood moved toward her, then stopped. He could not enter the direct sunlight without burning. Elena ran because she was afraid. Elara held the goblet in both hands. But she was also clever. She knew the curse required 3 souls, 2 trapped, 1 transformed. She left you incomplete. Mrs. Finch appeared in the doorway. Her expression was carefully blank. If I drink this in shadow, I replace you both. The binding transfers cleanly. Elara stepped forward into the band of sunlight. It burned now, a deep ache in her changing bones. But if I complete the transformation here, in the sun, while my body is still partly human, the curse won't know what to bind. Mrs. Finch's voice held something like wonder. It will break entirely, or it will kill you. Lord Blackwood's face had gone grey. Elara, please step back into shadow. Why? She met his silver-grey eyes across the brightening room. So you can be free while I spend eternity alone? You said you loved Elena. Was that also a lie? No. The word came out broken. I loved her. He stopped. Elara raised the goblet to her lips. Sunlight streamed through the glass walls, turning the room into a cage of light. Her skin began to smoke where the rays touched it. Then trust me. She drank. The liquid burned down her throat. Ice and fire and something that tasted like the moment before dawn. Her vision went white. She felt her body tear itself apart and rebuild, cell by cell, into something new. The curse screamed. She felt it writhing through her blood, trying to sink its hooks into her soul. But the sunlight was already burning through her transformation, scorching away the parts that would make her vulnerable to binding. She fell to her knees. The goblet clattered across the floor. Through the pain, she felt hands catch her, Lord Blackwood's hands, burning as he dragged her back into shadow. Mrs. Finch was there too, her weathered face tight with fear. Foolish woman. Lord Blackwood whispered against her hair. "Foolish, brave woman." The transformation settled. Elara opened her eyes. The sunlight no longer burned. She could feel it, warm and strange against her skin. But it did not harm her. She was something new, neither fully mortal nor fully cursed. "The binding is broken." Mrs. Finch touched the window frame, then stepped through into direct light. She laughed. The sound cracked with disuse. "I can feel the edge of the estate. It's gone." Lord Blackwood helped Elara to her feet. His hands shook. "What have you done?" His voice held awe and terror in equal measure. Elara looked at her reflection in the glass. Her hazel eyes held new gold flecks that caught the light. Her mousy brown hair fell loose around her shoulders. She was changed, but not lost. "I found a place where I am valued," she said softly, her fingers tracing the worn edge of the workbench she'd built that first week, its surface now scattered with wood shavings that caught the afternoon light like snow.